Hey everyone, Gary Simon of CourseCetera.com, and today I'm going to show you how to create a chat app using Angular as well as Firebase. And Firebase offers something called Angularfire 2, which allows you to hook into Angular 2 and hopefully here as well as Angular 4 coming up in March. So this, if something does break with it, I will update the article. So there is a fully written article step-by-step that goes alongside this video at CourseCetera.com, which I'll link here on YouTube in the description. Also check out CourseCetera.com for other Angular courses. I'm going to assume that you know Angular fundamentals before doing this course. If you don't, there's a 100% free course where you can follow along, and I'll link that as well. So let me go ahead and switch to the desktop and show you exactly what you'll be making. All right, so here's a quick preview of the app in the browser, and very simple as you can see. We have just a login with Facebook if the person is not currently logged in, and then the chat, which just features 5 of the latest messages starting at the bottom. So just to show you, let me go ahead and click login, and I'm logging into my wife's account here. I'm going to continue as Stephanie. It automatically comes back, and now we have a chat here message that shows up. Now let me just show you. I'll just type in what's going on. We hit enter, and there you go. So let me just show you side by side in 2 browser windows with 2 different accounts. And one is just in Internet Explorer over here on the right. And then we have Chrome on the left, and there's just 2 different accounts. So you'll see it's instant. We have 2 different names here. Okay, so let's kick things off by going to console.firebase.google.com here in our browser, or just go to Google and type in Firebase. You'll find the same page. And you'll make sure you want to log into your Google account as it uses your Google account, and create new project. All right, so for the project name it whatever you want. I'm just gonna call mine Chat Apper. I don't know why. I already used my chat app there when I was creating the written tutorial. And here we go, here we go, here we go. All right, great. So now the next step, we want to add Firebase to our web app. So if we click this, it eventually loads and gives us our credentials, and you want to save these 5 right here. We don't really have to integrate or use these script tags or anything like this. The only thing we want is just the information to these properties or the values. So we want to copy just this and just open up like Notepad or whatever and save that off the side. We're going to need them in a little bit. So let's go ahead and close. And then we need authentication and sign-in method. And here's all of the different ways they allow you to log into your app. So we have just a straight out email and password. For a custom option, we have Google, Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, and anonymous. Okay, so the one we're going to use for this tutorial is Facebook, although you can use the same process for pretty much all of these, especially when we're integrating the authentication in the Angular 2 Fire. So let's go ahead and choose Facebook and then enable. And now we need our app ID and the app secret, which is available in Facebook. So if you head on over to developers.facebook.com and choose an app from the right pull down menu that shows up over here, I have just some random one. I'm just showing you for demonstration purposes. We have our app ID right here. You want to copy that. And then also the app secret, which you can show, and I believe it prompts you for your Facebook password in order to reveal that. And don't close this yet because you're gonna have to go back, and then we'll switch back over to Firebase and you paste those 2 bits of information in. All right, so I pasted mine in, and what we want to do now is under here where it says to complete setup, add this OAuth redirect URI to your Facebook app configuration. So we click on this little link to copy it automatically to the clipboard, and we'll go back. And if you haven't yet added the product of Facebook login, we click on add product and then get started for Facebook login. We'll choose web here. Click save and continue, and we'll hit continue, continue. All right, so now we'll click on settings here, and right here where it says valid OAuth redirect URIs, this is where we paste that right there. All right, so just save changes. All right, and there we go. We're done with that. We can close that out. And we click Save here. Facebook enabled. Next, we'll go ahead and click Database. And we'll click on Rules. And right now it says Default Security Rules requires users to be authenticated. So for the purposes of development, make our lives a little bit easier, we're going to change this. And I'm going to copy and paste this right here and it really only changes just the properties right here. This is also available if you want to copy and paste it real quick on the CourseEtcher.com tutorial, written tutorial for this. And let's go ahead and save or publish right there. And it will give us this big red thing that your security rules are defined as public. Now anyone can read and write to the database. So of course you'd want to change these back after the app is finished. Okay. So now let's get started by setting up the project, and we need to make sure that you have a couple things before we proceed. So we need to check whether or not first if you have Node.js and npm installed. So at the command line, we'll go ahead and type node-v and then also npm-v. Usually if you install Node.js, by default it will have npm installed for you. So if this went unrecognized, then we simply need to head on over to nodejs.org and we'll go to Downloads and then choose Windows or Mac installer and then install it once it's ready to go, and just go through the installation process as you normally would, just next, and you'll find that at the end it does ask you, or it doesn't ask you, but it shows the different assets it's going to install, and the Node Package Manager is one of them. Just make sure that that is enabled and will be installed. Then you can close out your console and come back and run these, and they should give you the versions. All right. Now we also have to make sure that we have the Angular CLI or the command line interface installed. And to check for that, we simply type in ng-v. And it should spit out something similar to this. And if not, we'll go back to the browser to cli.angular.io. And this shows you how to install it and also get a new project run, which we'll do. So npm install-g for global and angular-cli. And the -g flag, all that means is you're only going to have to do that once on your machine. So it's only a one-step process. And so then once you have that installed, remember if you do this, at the end you can hit ng-v just like I did, and you'll be good to go. Okay, now we're ready to rock. So to start a new project, we're going to do ng new, and I'm just going to give mine the same name as before, although you can name it whatever you want. And this does take a little bit of time, so I'm going to pause and then come back. All right, once it's finished, we'll go ahead and cd into that folder. Mine was chat apper. And then also we're going to run npm install Angularfire 2 along with Firebase, and we'll save it to our package.json as a dependency. All right, great. So now that that is finished, we have to open up our code editor. I'm going to use Visual Studio Code, which is a free code editor by Microsoft. And we're going to add the Firebase project settings to our app.module.ts file. So in our code editor, I have open the project that we just created. And in the source app folder, we'll have our app.module.ts file. Okay, so we need to do three different things. The first, we need to import the Angularfire module from the Angularfire 2, which we installed with npm. So to do that, I'm going to copy and paste that right here. And by the way, you can grab all the code from the website at CourseEtcher.com and follow along. And also, we have to include our config for Firebase. So right here, I'll paste that in. And this is where we're going to use the information that we saved in a notepad or text file with our API key, domain, database URL, storage bucket, and messaging sender ID. All right, so I'm going to pause and just enter those in real quickly. And just for making sure I don't get hacked or anything, I removed it, but make sure you put those in and leave it there. And also, the third thing we need to do is go ahead and add the Angularfire module to our imports. All right, so what that looks like, right after HTTP module, we'll go ahead and add that just like that. All right, so of course this is showing up not there because I removed the config, but of course you won't have that red squiggly line if it's there. And now inside of our app.component.ts, where we're going to spend most of our time here, we need to first import necessary Firebase modules. So underneath here of the import component, we're going to, actually instead of me just typing this, I'm going to copy and paste this real quick. It's just one line, but there's a lot of different members here that we have to import. So first we have Angularfire, which is needed as a primary Angularfire member, contains all the functions that we need for the most part. We also have auth providers and auth methods, and then also Firebase list observable, which allows us to fetch all of the chat messages essentially. All right, so the next step, we're going to have the required properties here defined in export app or class component. So let's get rid of title here. And the first one is items, Firebase list observable, and then a type of any. And again, this here is going to fetch essentially all of the chat items from our Firebase project. And then name of type any. And this name property is something that we'll set to check if the auth is successful or not. And then also another custom property, we'll name it message val of type string equals just empty initially. And we're going to be using this for property binding, which will allow us to clear the text input field after a user hits enter, which I showed during the demonstration at the beginning. Okay, so now we're going to work within our constructor, and we're going to use dependency injection to get Angularfire working. So constructor, and inside we'll make a public AF and then colon Angularfire. All right, and then next we're going to create what's called a list binding, and this is going to grab all of the chat messages from a section called messages that will define when we actually send the chat messages. So this items is going to be bound to af.database.list/messages. And then we'll add a query. And this is optional. And we're going to add a property called limit to last. And we'll set it to 5. So that will give us the last 5 messages that were sent. Again, you don't have to add this, but I want to do that just for the UI. Otherwise, it'll scroll way down. Okay, so after that, we're also inside of the constructor here, we're going to add this.af.auth.subscribe, auth2, and we'll open this up. If auth this.name equals auth. Okay, so what's happening here? This is basically saying once a user or after a user clicks on the connect to Facebook or log into Facebook button, if the connection is successful, then we'll set this .name property to the auth object. And this is going to provide us with their name, for example, and we'll be able to send that along to Firebase. All right, so now in this section outside of our constructor, we're going to define a method. And this method we'll go ahead and name login. And inside of it, we're going to say this.af.auth.login. Provider is auth providers.facebook. And then method will be auth methods.popup. Now, what's happening here? Basically, when somebody clicks on our login to Facebook button, it's going to be bound to this method right here, login. All right. Then what it's going to do is this.af.auth.login is going to call which provider through auth providers.facebook. This could also be .twitter or GitHub, etc. I've listed out the other ones here in the article. And then also the method will be auth methods.popup, and that means it will pop up. Otherwise, the other option is redirect, and that will take the user entirely away from your app in the browser and direct them to Facebook to do the same process. But I like the pop-up better just because it keeps the app present in the background. And now finally, we'll create one more method, and that's going to be chat send. So chat send. And we're going to add in an argument of their message of a type string. And inside of it, we'll say this.items.push. And inside, we'll say message is their message, which we passed as an argument. And then name is going to be this.name.facebook.display name. Right there. We'll add a colon at the end, or semicolon. And then also we'll reset or clear the input text field with this.messageVal, which we defined as a property up top, equals just empty. All right, you may be confused about this section right here, the this.name.facebook.displayname. Basically, if you were to console log this.name, you would see all of the potential properties that you would be able to hook into. And this is just a display name is the person's first and last name that's associated with their Facebook account. Okay. All right, now that's it for our app component.ts logic. Now, the rest of this tutorial is very simple. So let's go ahead and go to our app.component.html, and I'm going to paste in some HTML, and I'm grabbing this, by the way, from the tutorial at courseetcher.com. And just a real quick run through, the div class row columns, these are classes that are predefined by the Foundation 6 Flex Grid. So we'll be importing that shortly in index.html down here. And if you're unfamiliar with Foundation 6 Flex Grid, in short, it simply allows you to quickly structure layouts. And so these are just predefined classes for that. And then our button here is using event binding, which is defined by parentheses, and on the onClick, and we bind that to our login method that we created. Very simple. Then we're also using the ngIf conditional to designate whether or not this button will show if the name property exists. Or in other words, if they're logged in, it's not going to show, which is designated by this operator right here. And then also we have a input text field, and this also uses the ngIf right here. So if it does exist, or if the person is logged in, it's going to show this chat message. And then we just have a simple placeholder attribute. And then we also have another event binding designated by the key up enter. So if they hit enter, it's going to call the chat send method, and it's going to pass in the event target value. Or in other words, it's going to, whatever they have typed in is what it's going to send to the chat send method. And then also we have two-way data binding here with ngModel at messageVal. And so this allows us to clear the text input when they hit enter. Okay, then coming down here, finally, we also have ng4 to iterate through right here all of the items, and we're also using the async pipe. And right here, we're using interpolation, and what exists on these is the item.name and then the item.message. And where is it grabbing these from? Well, if we go back to our app component, we have them defined right here when we do this.items.push. So we have the message, and then we have the name. So this stuff is stored inside Firebase. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that. And now we'll move on to the CSS. I'm going to copy all that and paste it to our app.component.css. I'm not going to run through all this and describe it. There's not much here, but basically what's happening, we have our input message. We're styling quite a different properties on this text field just to make it look quite different for the UI. We have our chat container. We also have our pseudo selectors of nth child, so that can make them fade. Let me just show you real quick. So as you can see right here, we have full opacity. This is full opacity as well. And then we use those pseudo selectors to kind of fade these out. So this I think is 80%, 60, and then 40. Yeah, not that much of a big deal. And then just 2 more for the chat container for styling the message and the name. Okay, and then moving on, we're going to go ahead and go to our source styles.css to define just some of the global styles. And there's only 3 of them really, and that is body, and we have one for all just to set the font family, and then the button here. So we're going to save both of these, and after that we're going to import foundation and a web font to our source index.html. So we'll click on this, and just right here I'm going to paste that in. So we have this linking to a CDN on Cloudflare to our foundation flex min.css file. And then I'm using this railway font from Google Fonts. And believe it or not, that is it. So now the only thing we needed to do is test it out by running the Angular Firebase chat app. And we'll do that with ng-serve. And in a couple seconds, it'll give you this, which is localhost 4200, which is where you want to go in your browser. And this is where I'm at in the browser. And there we go. Because I already logged in, I was already logged into Facebook, it doesn't even show me the button. But everything should work, hopefully. So testing chat message, hit enter, clears it as you can see, and adds it. And there we go. Now you can of course take this further. The next probably logical step would be to add a logout button somewhere. And again, if you just analyze the template HTML, if we go back here to our code editor and just do a little bit of reverse engineering if you're kind of unfamiliar with Angular itself, you use event binding on click to call methods in your app component. And those methods, of course, can do certain things like log in or, for instance, log out. So a log out method would simply look like this. And then in your app component HTML, you create another button that uses the ng-if conditional that only shows up, for instance, right here if name exists. And you can name it a button that says log out and call the logout method. So as you can see, you can take it a lot further on your own. And if you want to visit the GitHub repo, which is linked here in the article, as well as YouTube, you can get started real quickly and you can start customizing, adding more features, etc. So make sure you check out Coursetro.com. We have a lot more tutorials planned for this year, as well as courses and free courses that are already there that you can check out, especially if you want to learn more Angular. All right, talk to you later.